In her 25 years of government affairs work, Myra has worked on federal, state, and local types of projects. She's worked in healthcare, education, and higher ed, IT. She has really done the full gamut of government affairs work here in Texas.
There's some government relations people who specialize in one niche, but with Myra, there's probably not an area of the Texas economy that she is not involved with.
You know, one of the funny things about my conversations with Myra is I would always ask her what town she was from in South Texas, and she would say, it's a tiny town, you've never heard of it. It's called Ramirez. It's probably 12 houses and a school.
Her early childhood gave her the ability to deal with people of all sorts of backgrounds, socioeconomic levels, and of course she speaks perfect Spanish.
I smile at the thought of Myra growing up in a small town because she's anything but a small town girl. You think of her great, gigantic personality and wondering, okay, how did she do in a class of 9?
If you're in this small South Texas town, you really get a lot of grit and self-sufficiency and people who know how to just rely on each other and figure out how to make things happen.
Myra grew out of that background and became a much more important figure than anyone expected, I think, in the beginning.
Myra has always been a believer that higher education has been important, and a lot of that came from her parents, who were both teachers and believed that Myra needed to go on and get her degree.
There were a lot of people who would have said, gosh, I don't want to go to the University of Texas. It's going to be too big. It's going to be too scary. She became friends with a lot of folks and was very successful in developing interests that are very broad. Virtually all of my friends from South Texas, their parents wanted them to live in a Catholic dorm to make sure that they behaved and that they didn't stay out way too late. That served her well because if you live at Newman Hall, then you come home at the end of your classes and you study.
I first met Myra over 35 years ago when we were working at the Texas legislature. Myra was the chief of staff for Representative Irma Rangel, the first Latina legislator.
Irma Rangel had a huge commitment to lifting up the Latinos in Texas, to education and to equity, and I think that has made a long-term impact on Myra and everything that she's done since.
There are not a lot of women in that role in government relations. There are a lot of elbows, and Myra was able to be right there in the lead.
One of her greatest talents is connecting the dots. So she goes from a policy perspective, understands what we're trying to achieve in an industry, and helps us figure out how to strategize and get from point A to point B.
I first met her through our good friends Joe and Terry Long. Joe asked me if I would serve on the advisory council for LILAS. LILAS is the Lozano Long Institute for Latin American Studies. It merged recently with the Benson Library, which is the leading Latin American library in the world.
It's an important treasure trove for people studying Latin American-U.S. relationships. Myra has done whatever she could to make those materials available.
Just walking in there as a student, a Latina from South Texas, from the Texas-Mexico border, much like Myra, that was one place I could go study, hear Spanish, read Spanish, see Spanish, and sort of take in sort of a little bit of home.
She just took that organization to another level.
Once you're successful, your job is then to give back to your community, and she does that in many different ways.
She's one of the folks who, more than just about anybody else, really tries to promote others.
So it's Austin PBS, it's the Senate Hispanic Research Council, it's TAMAC, the Texas Association of Mexican American Chambers of Commerce. She makes them all better.
Among the great things she did was to meet Billy Atkins, her husband.
Myra and Billy have been very closely working with St. Austin's Church, where Billy serves as a deacon.
Myra and Billy together have demonstrated a tremendous amount of support, not just by raising money, but also giving money to the University of Texas.
Scholarships have been important to her, so she raises money and tries to get those small-town South Texans to be able to come to UT just like she did.
I think we often forget that she's also a cancer survivor. Much like her mentor, Irma Rangel, who also had breast cancer, Myra was able to beat it. Myra, you're my comadre, my friend, my amiga, and I am so thrilled that you're receiving this well-deserved honor.
She exemplifies exactly what UT stands for. It's the personal and professional combination that makes her so extraordinary.